Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are diving deep into an explainer all about advanced care planning. We're going to break down the exact coding mechanics of CPT 99497 and 99498 and figure out how these guidelines dictate payment for the time you spend guiding patients through these really critical decisions. Now, I have to ask, are you leaving revenue on the table? Or worse, unknowingly risking a massive compliance audit? Time-based coding can be super confusing, and honestly, the stakes are pretty high here. So let's demystify the math, the modifiers, and the rules together. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the ACP scope, hit the code and time thresholds, talk about surrogate and family discussions, dive into same-day co-billing rules, and finally, wrap up with those top audit red flags. So let's jump right into Section 1, Advanced Care Planning Scope, where we'll define the clinical foundation. According to the CPT guidelines, advanced care planning is, at its core, a voluntary face-to-face discussion. This happens between a physician or qualified healthcare professional and the patient, a family member or a surrogate, all regarding advanced directives. It's an absolutely crucial conversation about future medical care. And the best part? It can be provided across literally any care setting. We're talking outpatient offices, inpatient floors, observation units, or even nursing facilities. It's pretty interesting to see the sheer variety of directives this actually covers. During this face-to-face time, you're usually explaining things like a healthcare proxy, a durable power of attorney, a living will, or MOLST and POST forms. But here is the critical takeaway. You can actually bill for this counseling even if the legal forms aren't completed or signed that exact same day. The billable service is the discussion itself, not just the paperwork. When we look straight at the official CPT codebook entry, notice how heavily it emphasizes that face-to-face nature of the service between the provider and the patient, family, or surrogate. It clearly lays out the primary codes we'll be using, specifically calling out the explanation and discussion of advanced directives. Moving on to Section 2, Code and Time Thresholds. Let's break down the math. Okay, listen up, because this is exactly where coders and clinicians frequently get tripped up, the mechanics of these time-based codes. We have our primary base code, CPT 99497, which covers the first 30 minutes of that face-to-face conversation. Then we have the add-on code, CPT 99498, for each additional 30 minutes. But how do we actually calculate when to bill them? Well, we have to use the time midpoint rules. So here's how the midpoint rule works in practice. To bill that base code, 99497, you have to cross the midpoint of 30 minutes. That means a minimum threshold of exactly 16 minutes. If your documented face-to-face time falls anywhere between 16 and 45 minutes, you bill 99497. Now, if you want to tack on that add-on code, 99498, you need a minimum of 16 additional minutes on top of that first 30, meaning your total cumulative time must be at least 46 minutes. But wait, here is a massive warning you absolutely must remember. Time cannot be double counted. The guidelines are incredibly strict about this. Double-dipping time is literally one of the highest failure points in Medicare audits, and it leads to some huge clawbacks. If you are using total time on the date of the encounter to select your primary evaluation and management visit level, like a standard office visit, you absolutely cannot count those exact same minutes toward your ACP codes. The ACP time has to be carved out. It must be distinctly separate. All right, Section 3, Surrogate and Family Discussions. Let's talk about handling incapacity. So what happens when we run into real-world clinical challenges? Say your patient is totally unable to participate in the conversation because of severe illness, cognitive impairment, or an injury. The guidelines completely accommodate this. The patient's presence is not strictly required to bill ACP, provided they are incapacitated and you are having this vital discussion with an authorized decision maker. But who actually qualifies as an authorized decision maker? Well, you can have this conversation with legal family members, legally authorized surrogates, appointed healthcare proxies, or medical power of attorney holders. Ultimately, the key to staying compliant here boils down to your documentation. You have to note exactly who you're speaking with, their legal authority or relationship to the patient, and explicitly state why the patient lacked the decisional capacity to participate themselves. Let's roll right into Section 4, Same-Day Co-Billing Rules. It is time to master those modifiers. Now, if you're billing ACP alongside a routine problem-oriented E&M visit, think a 99213 or 99222, you'll need to append modifier 25 to that primary E&M code. But if you're co-billing ACP with a Medicare annual wellness visit, it's different. You must append modifier 33 to the ACP code itself.
Why? Because Modifier 33 signals a preventive service, and that actively waives the Medicare beneficiary's coinsurance and deductible obligations.
To make sure you're applying Modifier 25 perfectly, let's look at this exact quote from the AMA guidelines. When using codes 99497, 99498, no active management of the problem or problems is undertaken during the time period reported. This completely highlights why Modifier 25 is needed. The time you spend managing acute issues, adjusting meds, or going over lab results has to be completely halted and totally separated from the dedicated time you spend counseling on advanced directives. Finally, Section 5, Top Audit Red Flags. This is all about protecting your revenue. All right, these are the top compliance triggers that auditors are actively hunting for. First, if your time logs are vague, like missing the cumulative face-to-face minutes, you are totally at risk. Second, if you rely on EHR templates that just auto-bill 99497 without you typing out the specific discussion topics, that is a massive red flag. Other big triggers? Failing to note if forms were actually completed, double counting your ACP time with critical care or chronic care management, and forgetting to document that the patient actually consented to this voluntary service. So how do we fix this? Well, a compliant note for every single ACP encounter really comes down to 4 straightforward steps. Step 1, document the patient's consent and voluntary participation. Step 2, log the exact cumulative face-to-face time spent strictly on ACP. Step 3, detail the specific advance directives you actually discussed. And Step 4, note exactly who was present in the room, whether that's the patient, their family, or an authorized surrogate. Doing this paints a perfectly compliant picture of medical necessity. At the end of the day, it all comes down to this one question. Is your clinical documentation truly audit ready? If your templates don't naturally force you to capture these strict time parameters and surrogate rules, you honestly might be setting yourself up for failure before you even submit the claim. It's definitely something to review with your team. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Decode Healthcare with Harshal.